Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma, Day 4. Om Shri Sai Muktipradaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who confers liberation from ignorance, misery, and death. Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba confers liberation from ignorance, misery, and death. Bhagavan Baba says, human birth is a very special opportunity to seek liberation from the cycle of birth and death. On no other level does this opportunity exist. This is very rare and privileged and limited only to life on earth. Every being yearns for human birth, because only through human form one can realize God. Bhagavan Baba also says, the human body is an instrument to realize divinity. To attain this, one must give up body attachment. In order to get liberation, one must surrender one's mind to God. When God catches hold of the mind, all desires end, and once that happens, the mind is dissolved and man is liberated. This condition is called manolaya or manonashan, which means the mind is annihilated and merges with its true entity. To make us understand this, Swami gives the example of Gautam Buddha. He says, Buddha contemplated very deeply and realized that ultimately it is the mind that obstructs the progress in the process of self-realization. After this, he became amanaska, which means he removed all the barriers from the mind and attained nirvana, self-realization. Here is a very touching story of a little girl who attained liberation by the grace of Bhagavan Baba. Many years ago, one Swami was leaving to go to the banks of the Chitravati along with some devotees. A 6-year-old girl came there. She had noticed that Swami was walking bare feet, so she had brought a pair of sandals with her. She went up to Swami and requested him to wear the sandals. This gesture of the little girl pleased him immensely. He called her closer and said to her, "Ask whatever you want." Everyone was taken aback on hearing her demand, for she said, "Swami, I want to merge at your divine lotus feet." She was told to ask for something else, but she kept insisting on the same thing. Finally, her wish was fulfilled. She suffered from fever for just 2 days, and her soul merged in Swami. The compassionate Swami fulfilled her wish and conferred liberation. There is another story about Mr. and Mrs. Shankar Narayan of Kerala. Both of them had immense devotion for Swami. When Baba visited Kerala in 1959-60, he was pleased with their devotion and said, "Mrs. Shankar Narayan's devotion is great." In 1991, she passed away quite suddenly. Her daughter, who is a doctor, was mourning her mother's death and had only one question in her mind: "Where has mother gone? How is she?" Immediately, vibhuti and nectar started dripping from the photographs in her mother's puja room. It was as if Swami replied, saying, "Don't worry, your mother is with me now. Her life is fulfilled." Om Shri Satya Sai Arpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Kalusha Viduraya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who removes the faults and blemishes in all of us. When Bhagavan draws his devotees closer to him, he removes their faults and weaknesses. This enables the devotees to carry out their duties in the right manner. Can our faults remain hidden from Bhagavan Baba? Right from his childhood, he was very particular that everyone should stay away from bad habits. Here is a story that highlights this aspect. Swami was just 8 years old at the time. A well-known person living in Puttaparthi had a bad habit of collecting friends and gossiping with them all day long. Satyanarayana noticed this fault, and he also knew its bad effects. The person indulging in gossip himself becomes idle and makes others idle too. Little Satya found a remedy for this. He composed a song and taught it to his friends. When this group of people were sitting around and indulging in gossip, the children would go in their vicinity and sing the song. The song conveyed to the listeners, "Oh, elderly people, your behavior is not ethical. If you don't follow righteousness, your friends will hate you, they will leave you, and may even beat you." After hearing the song, the main culprit became uneasy, but by and by all of them grasped the truth behind it and improved their ways. Satya composed many similar poems and skits, in which he highlighted the defects prevailing in society. One of the popular skits composed by little Satyam was called Cheppinatlu Chestara, which means, should we not behave and do the way we talk? Here is an interesting story from the Shirdi Avatar. In 1911, a young man named Vaman Bhai Patel went to Shirdi for Sainath's darshan and wished to become worthy of his grace. Very lovingly, Sainath addressed him as Babu, and other devotees also started calling him by the same name. Due to his young age and growing body, Babu could not control his hunger. Once, due to uncontrollable hunger pangs, he kept eating sugar all day long, out of a sack of sugar. To help him overcome this bad habit, the omniscient Sainath told him a story. Sai said, "There was a person who was staying with me. He was suffering from tuberculosis. One morning I woke him up very early, gave him a handful of sugar to eat, and locked him up in a room. He was thirsty, so he caused a big uproar to come out of the room, but according to my instructions, nobody helped him. Finally, he was allowed to come out in the afternoon, and was given some food. He was cured in this manner. If one feels like eating sugar, one should eat just a little bit." Babu realized his mistake, and gave up his addiction for eating sugar. Once, this same Babu, uncontrollably hungry, felt like eating laddus. So he went to an innkeeper named Vasudeo. Sainath saw him from afar and shouted, "You are going there to eat, but you will die." But Babu ignored his warning, proceeded to the inn, and ate 3 laddus made out of gram flour. The result was that, as per Sainath's prediction, the next morning Babu suffered from severe stomachache and diarrhea, and started feeling uneasy. Finally, in the afternoon, Sainath sent him a piece of sweet barfi as prasad, and his health improved. By and by, with the help of Sainath's loving guidance, he was able to overcome his addiction to overeating. Om Shri Sathya Sai Arpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Karunakaraya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is compassionate. One of the qualities of divine incarnations is Karuna. They are supremely compassionate and respond to a devotee's call, shower compassion on him, and grant him bliss. The present Sri Sathya Sai Avatar is himself the source of all compassion, and his devotees have always experienced this grace. Here is a story from Chennai, which tells us how compassionate Swami is. A few years ago, a manufacturing unit at Chennai signed a contract with a Korean firm to manufacture and supply railway wagons. The wagons had to be delivered in a stipulated time frame, but the non-cooperation of the factory workers resulted in a delay. As the last day for the stipulated time frame neared, a Korean officer arrived in Chennai and booked a cargo ship to carry the consignment. But the wagons were not ready. Since it was not going to be possible to execute the contract on time, the executive in charge was very worried. He was an ardent Sai devotee, so he started praying to Swami fervently. The stress caused him to fall ill, but somehow he managed to write a letter to Bhagavan Baba, praying to him for his compassion, and gave the letter to a subordinate officer to personally give it to Baba. At the time, Swami was staying in a bungalow at Anantapur. When the officer reached there, with the letter in hand, he saw Swami coming out from the main door. Baba was walking through the crowd and blessing the devotees. As he walked on, he kept tying knots in the handkerchief in his hand. Swami came near the officer, and on seeing the letter in his hand, said, "Why are your superiors worried? The ship will reach only when the wagons are ready, and all their problems will be solved." As he was saying this, he pulled 2 corners of the knotted handkerchief, and all the knots opened up. For a few moments he looked at the sky, moved his finger as if writing something in the air, and walked away. At that very moment a storm appeared in the sea, and the ship was unable to reach Chennai as per the schedule. The ship was also damaged in the storm, and it needed repairs. To top it all, when it finally arrived near the port, due to heavy traffic, there was a further delay of 4 days before it could be anchored at port. In this manner the ship reached Chennai after a delay of 1 month. By this time the wagons were ready. Only Swami's compassion had saved the devotee from disgrace. The other incident is about Srimati Sharadamma. Once Swami said to her, "I am going to get you married to Karunyananda." All those who were present there laughed. Sharadamma was old and Karunyananda was an aged sannyasi. But when she pondered deeply over Swami's statement, she realized the inner significance. He meant to tell her, "I am an ocean of karuna, compassion, and I want you to merge in me." Om Shri Sathya Sai Arpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Sarvadharaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the support of all. There is a poem in Marathi which conveys, "One who is an orphan in this world has God by his side. Even the sky which is without a support, he bears its weight." The feeling expressed through this verse is verily true, because God is the support of all. He supports all those who seek refuge in him. The most enlightening example is that of Bhagavan Shri Krishna, who lifted the Govardhan mountain to save the people of Gokul. Lord Indra's wrath caused torrential rains, and when the cowherds of Gokul came to Shri Krishna for his help to save themselves and their cattle, he lifted the Govardhan mountain on the tip of his little finger and protected them all. In fact, he did not even want to take any credit for this glorious act, so he asked all of them to support the mountain with their sticks. So, when God supports his devotees, he does not even take any credit for it. There are so many devotees all over the world who are leading their life in comfort only due to the support of Sri Sathya Sai. Here is a story which illustrates this fact. In 1966, a couple with 2 children were living in Mumbai. Their life was beset with difficulties. The wife was born in a devout family. But after marriage, things took a different turn. She had to face a very difficult life. Although her husband was earning enough, his entire income was spent on his siblings. There was no saving. To add to the woes, the husband developed a cyst on his neck. In no time it got enlarged and turned into an abscess. When they showed it to a doctor, he suspected it to be cancer. He asked the lady to clean it with spirit. On doing that, the cyst burst and started oozing. She applied Shirdi Sai's Udi on the wound, thinking it to be the best remedy. Due to stress, the husband's health deteriorated further and he suffered a heart attack. In the meanwhile, somebody told the wife that Shirdi Sai had reincarnated as Sri Sathya Sai and resided at Puttaparthi in Andhra Pradesh. The wife persuaded the husband to go there. He agreed and the couple left for Puttaparthi. The day after they reached Puttaparthi, Swami called them for an interview. During the interview, Baba asked the gentleman to take off his shirt and vest. Then, Swami materialized Vibhuti. With one hand, he rubbed it on the person's chest, and with the other hand, rubbed it on the cyst. Swami laughed and said, "Who says you have cancer or a heart attack? You are completely all right." The moment they heard this, the couple burst into tears. On reaching Mumbai, they met the doctor. He was greatly surprised on seeing that the patient had recovered so dramatically. After that, the couple started visiting Puttaparthi at least once a year. But their financial condition was still not very stable. One year, they did not even have enough money to travel to Puttaparthi. They thought of an idea. They sold old newspapers that had piled up since 2 years, and managed to procure enough funds to buy 2 return tickets. They left for Swami's darshan. This time also, Swami blessed them with an interview. While he was giving instructions, Swami suddenly raised his right hand, stretched it for a moment, and closed his fist. As he opened his palm, a photograph had manifested in it. Swami gave it to the husband and said, "Always carry this photo in your pocket. Don't ever separate it from your body. Then he turned to the wife and said, "Yours is a devout family. You are humble and patient by nature. I am very pleased with you. I bless you with Akhanda Saubhagya." This is considered to be the highest boon for a Hindu married woman. It means that her husband will have a very long life. After becoming recipients of Swami's grace and blessings, the couple returned to Mumbai and got into their usual routine. As per Swami's instructions, the husband started carrying his photo in the pocket all the time. One day, the gentleman met with a serious accident. He had a head injury and started bleeding profusely. Somebody took him to a hospital. Fortunately, the wound only needed suturing. The family was informed. Everyone was in a state of shock, but the wife was calm and firm. Peacefully, she applied Swami's Vibhuti on her husband's forehead. She was mentally only dwelling upon his blessing of Akhanda Saubhagya. After the husband's health improved slightly, they left for Swami's darshan. But the husband had developed a feeling of guilt. As they reached Puttaparthi, Swami immediately called them in and inquired after their well-being. But the gentleman could not face Swami. He stood with his head bent. Swami held his chin and lifted his head and asked, "Are you afraid because you have lost the photo? Did you lose it when you met with the accident? That's what you think, isn't it? I had given it to you for your protection, and it is not lost. Here, it has come back to me after having saved you." Swami opened his fist, and the same photograph was there on his palm. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Sarva Hridaya Vasine Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who resides in the hearts of all. Swami says, "I dwell in the hearts of all, but some don't realize it." Swami also cites the reason for this. He says, "God's image is in your heart. If you are unable to see it, understand that your heart is covered with the dust of desires and indiscipline. Wipe it through knowledge, service, and devotion, and you will be able to realize your own divinity." This is an incident from the life of Dr. R. S. Padmanabhan. In 1973, Swami asked him to travel to USA for his son's admission. When the doctor arrived at Puttaparthi to seek his blessings, Baba materialized a topaz ring for him. At that time, Colonel Joga Rao, who was also present there, asked him, "Swami, can one see your image in this ring?" Baba answered, "My image may or may not be there, but I will be in his heart and will look after him." Saying so, Swami blew on the ring thrice, and his image appeared on it. With Bhagawan's blessings, Dr. Padmanabhan left. At first, he disembarked at Bonn and visited a dental hospital there. He had to travel to Düsseldorf to take the onward flight. When he arrived at Bonn airport, he was told that his flight to Düsseldorf was cancelled. He didn't know what to do, because he was to reach Amsterdam from Düsseldorf, and two aged friends of his who were Sai devotees were waiting for him at Amsterdam. Just then the airport officer came up to him and said, "Düsseldorf is about 110 kilometers away. If you take a taxi, you may be able to reach in time to catch the onward flight." Saying so, the officer hailed a cab, and Dr. Padmanabhan traveled in it to Düsseldorf. As he reached the airport and got off the cab, a porter dressed in a white uniform came up to him and lifted his baggage. He carried it all the way through. After taking his seat, the doctor started looking for the porter in order to pay him, but he was already gone. The onward journey was smooth, and after completing the task of his son's admission, he returned to India. On his return, he went to Brindavan ashram to seek Swami's darshan. Bhagawan inquired after his trip. The doctor said, "It was fine." Swami commented, "Except for that incident at Düsseldorf. I had to carry your baggage from the taxi to the airplane, and you did not even thank me." It was then that Dr. Padmanabhan remembered Swami's words, "I will be in his heart and look after him." Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Punya Phala Pradaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the bestower of the fruits of merit. In the 12th shloka of the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has declared, Yuktah karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim ayuktaha kamakarena phale shakto nibhadyate. The united one, the well-poised, having abandoned the fruit of action, attains eternal peace. The non-united, the unsteady or unbalanced, impelled by desire and attached to the fruit, is bound. The inner significance of this verse is, a karma yogi, one who pursues the path of action, offers the fruits of action to God and attains eternal peace. And a person devoid of yoga has unending desires and is attached to the fruit, so he gets bound. Even so, whatever merit the devotee earns by offering the fruit of action to God, the Almighty confers the reward on the devotee. When Swami Amritananda first met Bhagavan Baba, he was 85 years old. On seeing him, Bhagavan uttered, "Come Amritam." Swami Amritananda's guru, Sri Ramana Maharshi, alone used to call him in that loving way. Bhagavan not only blessed Amritananda, but also asked him about his participation in the Ganesh Yag at the age of 7. On hearing this, Amritananda said, "I was only a 7-year-old child then. How can I get a reward for that?" Bhagavan then blessed him with an effulgent darshan of Sri Ganesha and himself, and rewarded Swami Amritananda for the merit earned. Bhagavan also cured him of asthma, which Amritananda had contracted due to wrong practice of yoga. The other example is that of Sri Pandurang Dikshit. When he was in his mother's womb, Shirdi Sainath had bestowed blessings on him. Later, when Dikshit heard that Sainath had reincarnated as Sri Sathya Sai, he, along with his family, went for Swami's darshan. He secured Bhagavan's grace through his melodious voice. Wherever Swami asked him to go, he traveled there and spread the fragrance of Sai's glory. He went all over Maharashtra and enchanted people through Nam Sankirtan by singing beautiful melodious Sai bhajans. Whatever merit he accumulated, Swami granted him the reward. Whenever any calamity struck the Dikshit family, Swami showered his grace and protected them, thereby making their life joyous and peaceful. Om Shri Sathya Sai Arpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Sarva Papa Kshayakaraya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the destroyer of sins. To redeem a devotee from sin is to liberate him from the suffering due to past karma. Only incarnations have the power to make this possible. While describing Bhagavan Baba, it is said, Darshanam Papanashanam. Just by his darshan alone, the devotees get absolved of their sins. Bhagavan Baba's darshan inspires the devotees to shed their bad qualities and experience God's presence in their purified hearts. Thereby, they get liberated from their suffering due to past karma. A story from the life of Shirdi Sai. A young man named Ishwar Lal came for Sainath's darshan from Mumbai. At the time, the Ramnavami festival was being celebrated. He participated in it and served Sainath according to his capacity. All of a sudden, he contracted cholera and got bedridden. He was staying at the house of a lady named Radha Krishna Mai. The lady never came for Sainath's darshan, nor did she ever visit the Dwarka Mai. But she had attained such oneness with Sainath that whatever he spoke in the Dwarka Mai, she could know and understand it while sitting in her house. When Ishwar Lal started gasping for breath, Radha Krishna Mai realized that his end was drawing near. She asked him, "Have you performed any good deeds to earn merit?" He barely managed to say no and passed away. At this, Sainath said, "He has secured a good place in the other realm." Although he did not perform any meritorious deed throughout his life, he offered his seva at Sainath's feet during his last few days. So the compassionate Sainath granted him the reward by absolving him of his sins, papanasham, and granted liberation. Long ago, at Puttaparthi, a woman once offered poisoned vadas, a type of snack, to Bhagavan Baba. Very lovingly, Swami ate the vadas, although he knew they were poisoned. The woman followed him to see the effects. Baba pressed his stomach, and the vadas came out of his mouth whole, as they were served to him. On seeing this, the woman repented and fell at Swami's feet. With an open heart, Swami forgave her and inspired her to tread the path of devotion. He absolved her of her sins and granted salvation. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Sarvaroga Nivarine Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who removes all the diseases. Shri Shyam Juwale is the name of one among the countless devotees of Swami. On May 27, 1963, for the first time he visited Whitefield and was blessed triple-fold with darshan, padsparshan and sambhashan. After this, on many occasions, he visited Puttaparthi and Whitefield for Swami's darshan. Every time, Swami talked to him, gave him guidance, and granted many interviews. With Swami's blessings, Mr. Juwale started the first study circle in Maharashtra. In his life's journey, many a time he underwent physical suffering, but he completely surrendered his life's care to Swami and remained unfazed. In a short time after he became a Sai devotee, Shyambhau suffered from eczema, a skin disease, on his leg. He consulted a doctor in Mumbai and started treatment, but instead of getting cured, the eczema started spreading. It came to a point that he was unable to even walk properly. During that period, he yearned for Swami's darshan and went to Puttaparthi along with his family. In those days, it was not possible to know about Swami's whereabouts from long distances or via telephone. So when the Juwale family reached Puttaparthi and found that Swami was not there, Mrs. Juwale could not control her tears. On the next day, some devotees informed them about a spring of water nearby. The water from the spring collected in a pool, and a basin was built around it. It was known to be holy water, and it cured many diseases. Mrs. Juwale insisted that they visit the spot, so the family reached there. The water basin was surrounded by beautiful idols, and there was an enchanting garden of tulsi plants around it. A lot of people were partaking the holy water. Some were collecting it in bottles, yet the level of water remained constant. Mr. Juwale drank some of it, applied some on his leg, and they returned to the ashram. 2 days passed, but no effect could be seen on the affected leg. Maybe this was because Swami's grace had to directly fall upon this devotee to further strengthen and confirm his faith. On the 3rd day, suddenly Swami returned and all the activities were resumed. The very next day, the family were called for an interview. On entering the room, they were blessed with Pad Namaskar. Swami materialized Vibhuti, turned to Mr. Juwale and said, "You are suffering from eczema on your leg, isn't it?" The portion of the leg that had contracted the disease was not visible, as it was covered by the trousers. But can anything remain hidden from our beloved Swami? Swami continued, "Don't worry. For 7 days apply Ganji on it." Shyambhau was confused. He did not know what Ganji meant. The omniscient Swami answered, "The excess water that we throw out while cooking rice is Ganji." And while saying so, Swami also enacted it with his hands. The family reached Mumbai with Swami's blessing. As per his instruction, Shyambhau applied the Ganji water on the infected area for 7 days. On the 8th day, there was no trace of the disease. The eczema had disappeared. Not even a spot or a mark could be seen, and the leg was as fine as before. The second incident is also from Mr. Juwale's life. A few years later, Mr. Juwale realized that some cysts had developed behind his ear. Soon they began to grow in size and number. He did not suffer from any earache, but he felt some heaviness. If any part of the body develops any growth, a person's mind gets burdened with worry. Mr. Juwale was no exception. So he consulted a doctor who suggested that he should show it to an ENT surgeon. Accordingly, Shyambhau met a well-known ENT specialist in Mumbai. The doctor examined the cysts and asked him to get some tests done. On seeing the reports, the doctor said, "Surgery is the only remedy. If not immediately, you must get it done in a month's time. Otherwise, the cysts will go on increasing." Prior to the doctor's visit, Mr. Juwale had booked railway tickets for Puttaparthi. So, he decided to undergo surgery only on their return from Puttaparthi. Within 2 days after reaching there, Swami called them for an interview. He inquired after the family. He also asked, "How is study circle? In what way are you conducting it?" Swami seemed pleased with his answers. Suddenly, as he was talking, he materialized Vibhuti. In order to receive it, Mr. Juwale stretched his palm, but Swami ignored it, walked 2 steps forward, and rubbed it behind Shyambhau's ears with his own hands. It was only then that Mr. Juwale remembered about the cysts. He had forgotten about it completely. Swami patted him on his back and asked him to return home. When Shyambhau returned to Mumbai, he realized that there was no sign of the cysts. Yet he wanted to be sure, so he went to see the specialist. The doctor too could not see the cysts. Once again all the tests were done. On seeing the reports, the doctor said, "Maybe the earlier reports were wrong." How could the doctor have known that the report was not incorrect, but that the patient had been healed by the doctor of doctors, the supreme healer Dhanvantari, who had made the cyst disappear in a moment? Thousands of devotees from all over the world have experienced this phenomenon, where they have been healed mentally and physically, just by Swami's divine will. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Sarvabadha Haraya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who takes away all the sufferings. God's heart is softer than butter. It melts at the devotee's suffering, and His grace starts flowing abundantly. Only His grace can relieve the devotee of his agony. Many a time, in order to free him, God has taken on His devotee's suffering upon His own physical body, the body which He has assumed for the sake of the devotees. Here is a story from Sai's Shirdi incarnation. There was a devotee of Sai Maharaj by the name Dada Saheb Khaparde. In January 1912, while he and his wife were residing at Shirdi, all of a sudden his son suffered from high fever. It was so high that the boy started writhing in agony, so the mother's mind became restless. One evening, when Sainath set out on his usual evening round, the boy's mother, Mrs. Lakshmibai Kaparde, ran to Sainath and fell at his feet. Wailing aloud, she narrated everything to Sai. In this difficult situation, Sainath comforted her, saying, "Think that the sky is overcast. There will be a cloud burst, and the sky will be cleared as before. When such is the case, why be afraid?" Saying so, he lifted his robe, and after showing everyone present there the odorous glands as large as hens' eggs that had erupted all over his body, said, "See, this is how I have to take your suffering upon myself." On returning home, Lakshmi Bai found out that her son's fever had abated. God removes not only physical, but also mental suffering, and ordains the devotee's worldly as well as spiritual progress. A long time ago, Swami had gone to Delhi to give darshan to his devotees there. A huge crowd had gathered at the venue where Swami was to give darshan. Among them were many wealthy personalities too. The chauffeur of one of these persons was curious to know whose darshan his sahib had gone for, so he parked the car and reached the venue. But the crowd was so large that he got Swami's darshan only from afar, and so it was not very clear. As he was looking at Swami, he started thinking about the mountain of physical sufferings and financial difficulties that he was overburdened with, and thought, "If I could have got closer to this Baba, at least I would have been able to tell him about my difficulties." But he was destined to get the darshan only from afar, so he had to return back without making a mention of his problems to Baba. A few years passed. Whatever problems the chauffeur had, they dissolved on their own. The mountains of difficulties disappeared. After becoming free from worry and fear, he heard from somebody about Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, and he reached Prashanti Nilayam along with his family. As he sat in darshan lines, Swami selected him for an interview. During the interview, Baba said to him, "We have met once earlier, long time ago. Your prayer reached me." On hearing this, he remembered the incident in Delhi, where he had got Swami's darshan from afar, and he had been disappointed because he was unable to convey his problems to Swami. But from what Baba told him now, he was convinced that Swami is God, because although at the time he did not even get a close darshan or a chance to talk to Swami, he knew about his suffering. Also, he had turned his gracious gaze on the chauffeur and removed all his difficulties. God alone is closest to us, because he is the indweller in everyone's heart. A devotee's earnest plea melts his heart, and he takes care of every detail in the devotee's life. Om Shri Sathya Sai Natharpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Anantanuta Kartrine Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the creator and who is praised endlessly. Bhagavan Vishnu has assured Narada, Madbhakta yatra gayanti tatra tishtami Narada. Narada, wherever my devotees sing my glory, I am always present there. Swami says, I created this world for my own joy. Mountains rose up, rivers started flowing. Earth and sky, oceans and water bodies were formed. The sun, moon, and deserts sprang up. Then the living beings were created. Man was given the first place, and my knowledge was placed in his mind. Since the knowledge about God was already placed in the human mind, man started singing his glory from that very moment. He realized that by singing God's glory, he can please him. According to the saying, Devanam Priyastuti, God is praised endlessly, and it is going to remain so forever, eternally. In Bhakti Marga, there are 9 forms of devotion. Among these, the second form is Kirtanam, singing God's glory. The devotees knew that through Kirtanam one can win God's grace in order to cross this ocean of life easily. So Kirtanam acquired the second place in Navavidha Bhakti. In order to make the devotees understand the importance of singing God's glory, Swami established the Pandhari Bhajan group in his childhood itself. As a young boy, little Satya used to collect children of similar age group and teach them bhajans describing the glory of various names of God. This Pandhari Bhajan group would carry cymbals in hand, wear jingles in their feet, and go all over Puttaparthi singing bhajans. Due to this, not just in Puttaparthi alone, but in the surrounding villages also, devotion sprang up in the hearts of elders. The group was invited to sing bhajans in several villages, and wherever they performed, the villages were protected from spread of epidemics, and people started developing faith in the power of Kirtanam. Swami has given us this easiest path of devotion, Nam Smaran and Nama Sankirtan. Millions of Sai devotees from all over the world are singing God's glory and enjoying the bliss derived from it. Here is an incident from Mumbai, which shows that wherever God's glory is sung, He is present. A couple who were devotees of Swami used to visit various places to attend Sai bhajans. They felt that they should have a bhajan at their home. So on Good Friday, since it was a holiday, they planned a bhajan. Everyone was invited. With great enthusiasm, they made all the arrangements for bhajan and Mahaprasad. In the evening, as the bhajan started, suddenly the garland on Swami's photograph started swinging. As the bhajan picked up momentum, it started swinging faster. In the photograph, one could see Swami standing on the ground in front of Prashanti Mandir. All of a sudden, a little girl shouted, "Swami!" When her mother asked her as to what happened, she said, "See, Swami is standing in front of me." On asking where he was, she pointed to the front and said that he had come out from the photograph on which the garland was swinging, and was standing there. Everyone was wonderstruck. As long as the girl could see Swami, the garland on the photograph kept swinging. When he vanished, it stopped swinging. Sage Narada says, when one contemplates on God's name incessantly, an unending stream of devotion pours forth and fills the devotee's heart with bliss. Due to this, he forgets body consciousness and completely gets immersed in divine love. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Adi Purushaya Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the primeval Purusha, the Creator himself. Adi Purusha is the one who was there before, is present now, and will be there in the future also. He is the Purusha, the eternal charioteer, who rides the chariot of the body. The Bhagavad Gita tells us, Ajopi sannavyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakritim swamadhishtaya sambhavamyatma mayaya. Though I am unborn and of imperishable nature, and though I am the Lord of all beings, yet ruling over my own nature, I take birth through my own Maya. The present Sri Sathya Sai Avatar is Adi Purusha, and he is incarnated in human form by his own will. During the Sri Krishna Avatar, there were some people who were unable to understand his divine nature, and thinking of him as a mere human, disobeyed and disregarded him. In this day and age, too, there are the ignorant who do not understand Bhagavan Baba's divinity and are the losers. A number of yogis and devotees who are seekers of knowledge and wisdom have experienced that Sri Sathya Sai is Adi Purusha. When Bhagavan Baba was at Rishikesh in the ashram of Swami Shivananda, he saved a yogi from drowning in the river near Vashishta caves. The yogi had invoked God, and his plea reached Bhagavan Baba. Bhagavan responded to his prayer and saved his life. This incident illustrates that Bhagavan Baba is Adi Purusha. Being Adi Purusha, he remembers the various births of his devotees during the times of every incarnation. This story is from the life of Shirdi Sai Avatar. Mrs. Lakshmi Ganesh Kaparde was an ardent devotee of Sainath. He especially loved her and always showered his grace upon her. When she offered food to him as Naivedya, he would eat it immediately. Once, when Madhavrao Deshpande, Shama, asked him about it, he said, in one of her earlier births, she was a fat cow who yielded lots of milk. Then, for some time she went missing. Later, she was born in a Kshatriya family, and then she was a merchant's wife. After this, she was born in a Brahmin family. I am seeing her now after a long time, so let me enjoy eating some food which she has cooked with so much love, and let her also get the satisfaction. May the Adi Purusha Sainath bless us too with similar happiness. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Adi Shaktaye Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the primeval cosmic energy, the Shakti aspect of the Creator. Shri Sathya Sai is the Divine Mother and is the primeval cosmic energy, the Shakti aspect of the Adi Purusha. According to the boon conferred on sage Bharadwaj, Lord Shiva decided to incarnate thrice during Kali Yuga. Accordingly, Shirdi Sai was Shiva Avatar, Parthi Sai is Shiva Shakti Avatar, and Prema Sai will be Shakti Avatar. Since Bhagavan Baba is Shiva Shakti incarnate, the source of all power, the Adi Shakti dwells in him. He has given darshan to several devotees as Adi Shakti. In 1940, Swami declared his avatarhood. Thereafter, during the Navaratri festival, the devotees used to worship him every day, and in the evenings they used to take him in a procession, seated in a decorated palanquin. During this time, he gave darshan to several devotees in the form of Adi Shakti. The devotees used to be blessed with darshan in many forms of the Devi Ma, like Jagan Mohini, Tripura Sundari, Durga Mata, Meenakshi of Madurai, Vishalakshi of Kashi, and Kamakshi of Kanchi. Later, this festival changed its form, and Swami blessed the lady devotees with the opportunity of chanting the Lalita Ashtotra Shatanamavali and Kumkumarchana. From 1961, Swami started organizing Sri Veda Purusha Saptah Gyan Yajna Mahotsava. During this week-long celebration, there was Veda chanting, Atirudra Yag, Japa Homa, Sri Chakra Puja, Sahasralinga Puja, reading of Srimad Ramayana and Sri Devi Bhagavad. So the ever-compassionate Adi Shakti Rupini Swami started a Jnana Yajna along with the worship of Dashabhuja Dharini, Sri Durga Devi, and blessed everyone. Since Adi Shakti is the form of Divine Mother, she is full of love and compassion towards her devotees, and instantly rushes to their aid. Here is an enlightening example. After Prashanti Nilayam was established, in one instance while talking to his devotees, Swami suddenly started twisting and turning his body, and it became stiff like wood. On seeing him that way, the devotees were shocked and felt very anxious. Swami was in that condition for about 10 minutes. Then he awakened slowly, and with a soft smile, the Sai Mata said, "A lady devotee of mine in America was suffering from labor pains. In order to free her, I had to rush there. I blessed her and the baby daughter and returned back." A few months later, this lady came for Swami's darshan, and this incident was confirmed. On 20th October 1965, during the inaugural function of Prashanti Vidwan Mahasabha, Swami announced that he was Adi Shakti. He said, "Earlier Devi Bhavani had blessed Raja Shivaji with a sword and ordered him to protect the Hindus. Today, this Shiva Shakti is giving these Pandits the weapon of fortitude, and I order them to go out into the world to carry out the mission of the revival and upliftment of righteousness." Om Shri Sathya Sai Natharpanamastu. Om Shri Sai Aparupa Shaktine Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who has delightful and wondrous powers. Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba is Shiva Shakti incarnate. Before taking human form, he had given auspicious indications about his advent. After birth and right from his childhood, he has performed many miracles. The special qualities of Sakshatkar, realization, Chamatkar, miracles, and Paropakar, benevolence, which are present in divine incarnations, have been prominently seen in Swami from his childhood. The 7 special characteristics which can be seen only in an avatar are prosperity, knowledge, non-attachment, glory, creation, maintenance, and dissolution, and all these can be seen embodied in Bhagavan Baba. By his Sankalpa, divine will, he has performed many miracles which are beyond the scope of science. Be it making a dead person come alive, or being present in 2 places at the same time. These things are possible only through Swami's divine will. Here are 2 examples which give a glimpse of his divine qualities. Once, Swami's ardent devotee Sri Pandurang Dikshit had gone to Puttaparthi along with his family during Dasara celebrations. His daughter Jyotsna used to participate in the morning Nagar Sankirtan with a lot of zeal. One morning, when some of her friends came to wake her up, she said, "Today I had a wonderful dream. In that dream, Swami materialized a crystal japmala and put it around my neck." The same morning, Swami called the Dikshit family for an interview. He materialized a crystal japmala exactly like the one shown in the dream, gave it to Jyotsna, and said, "Your dream has come true." From this incident, we can clearly understand that Swami controls our lives not only in the waking state, but also in the dream states of our mind, and is a divine incarnation with wondrous powers. The other example is that of Mr. Walter Cohen. He suffered a massive heart attack and was moved to a hospital in Madras, now Chennai, immediately by Mrs. Elsie Cohen, with the help of Mrs. Ratanlal and others. On arrival, the doctors declared him dead. His nose and ears were blocked with cotton wool, the body was covered, and was transferred to another part of the hospital. It was the morning of 25th December 1971. Swami responded to Mrs. Cowan's prayers and went to the hospital and restored him to life. Mr. Cowan, who was declared dead by the doctors, was resurrected, but at that time, physically, Swami was giving a discourse to a gathering of devotees somewhere else. When Mr. Cowan was found to be alive, the doctors conducted some tests on him. At that time, he was not only found to be in perfect health, but there was also no trace of the severe diabetes or any other illness from which he had been suffering earlier. So, Swami not only blessed him with rebirth, but he awarded him a new life, free from all diseases, which disappeared with the death. All this happened only due to the wondrous, miraculous power of Swami's Sankalpa. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Avyakta Rupine Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who is the form of the Supreme Unmanifest Brahman. Swami says, I have taken birth by my own will. I chose my mother. I also proclaimed my avatarhood myself. I took a name and a form, and came here from the unmanifest, in order that man should attain divinity. The present avatar of Bhagavan Baba is the omnipresent one, who encompasses this entire universe. He has taken human form only to redeem mankind. It is the experience of innumerable devotees that whichever name and form of God they may pray to, their prayer reaches Bhagavan Baba. Here are two examples about the unseen divine power of Sai. One is from the Shirdi avatar and the other one from the Parti avatar. A student by the name Vaman Bhai Patel went to Shirdi for Sainath's darshan. Once, when he was sitting on the steps of Dwarka Mai, Sainath sent him a piece of sugar candy through someone. Moments after he ate it, he received a letter from Mumbai, written by his father. The father informed him that he had passed in the SSC examination. He was very happy and thought of offering some sweets to Sainath. So in the evening, he went to an innkeeper, got a few laddus, put them in a box, and brought them to Sainath. On seeing him, Sainath exclaimed, "Oh, you have come here with laddus! But on the way, you did not bother about anybody, and now you have come here with the box?" Initially, Vamanbai did not understand the meaning of this statement. But later, he remembered that while coming to Sainath, a hungry dog had been following him. Vamanbhai, however, did not give him a laddu, and later offered the box to Baba. How will the omnipresent Sai approve of this, who is concerned about the welfare of all? The other story is from the village of Shefale in Sangli district. There is a lady named Mrs. Kamal Dikshit from an ordinary middle-class background living there. She gets Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba's darshan daily in her house at midnight. Sometimes he plays the flute, sometimes imparts instructions, and sometimes he teaches bhajans. This has been going on continuously for many years. Once she kept awake all night, but Swami did not come, so Mrs. Dikshit was very dejected. Next night when he came, she asked him the reason for not coming the earlier night. Swami said, "Of course I had come here last night. I even ate the Nevedya." Kamal Dikshit was surprised. Swami answered, "Last night, while you were waiting for me, a bumblebee came into the house. It touched the tea from the teacup and flew away. Who was it? That was myself." Later, by coincidence, Mrs. Sarla Joshi from Pune heard about Mrs. Kamal Dikshit. Mrs. Joshi personally visited the Shitpale village and spent 8 days and nights with Mrs. Dikshit. In fact, for a person like Sarla Tai, who was used to the comforts of city life, it was a real penance to spend 8 days in a village where electric supply was erratic and even a fan was not available. However, due to her intense devotion for Swami, she stayed there very happily and published the life story of Mrs. Kamal Dikshit of Shitpale village in a Hindi book titled Sai Charan Kamal. Due to this, devotees from all over came to know about this remarkable phenomenon. Sarla Tai has published several books on Swami in Hindi. Due to her contribution, many people from Uttar and Madhya Pradesh came to know of Swami's life, his leelas, and his mission. In this way, She fulfilled her worship through literature. Yes, this is the same Sarla Tai to whom Swami has promised. Whoever regularly recites my Ashtotri 3 times a day, as specified by the Sanatana Dharma, morning, afternoon, and evening, without fail, for 1 year, I will fulfill all his tasks. We offer our Koti Pranams to this unmanifest aspect of Swami, who is ever present in every atom of this universe. May he give us the intelligence to realize his divine invisible power. This is our prayer at his divine lotus feet. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma. Om Shri Sai Kalpadruma Namaha. Salutations to Shri Sai, who destroys desire and anger. In the 21st shloka of the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has declared, Trividham narakasyedam dwaram nashanam atmanaha kama krodha tatha lobha tasmadeta trayam tyajet. These 3 gates to hell are destructive of the self-lust, anger, and greed. Therefore, one should abandon these 3. The Shadripus, or the 6 negative qualities of the human nature, pose as obstacles in the path of God realization. As long as these obstacles exist, God does not accept that person as a devotee. How will God dwell in a heart which is filled with Shadripus? Only when we discard the negative qualities like anger, lust, desire, and greed will our mind attain peace. We will lose body consciousness, our heart will be purified, and then God will take his seat in our hearts. Here are 2 incidents which narrate how Swami destroys negative traits like anger, etc. in his devotees. The first incident is from Swami's childhood. One day, a teacher in class realized that all the students were taking down notes except Satyanarayana. So he got angry and said, "Whoever is not writing may stand up." Satya stood up. The teacher asked, "Why are you not writing?" Innocent Satyanarayan replied, "I know everything that you are teaching. Then where is the need to write notes?" The teacher's ego was hurt. He penalized Satya by asking him to stand up on the bench. Satya obeyed the teacher. But when the class got over, the teacher got stuck to his chair and could not get up. When another teacher came there to take the next class, he understood that this had happened due to the unreasonable punishment given to Satya. The teacher was asked to withdraw the punishment. The moment it was done, he was able to get up from the chair, his anger and ego were destroyed, and from then on he became an ardent devotee of Swami. The second incident is from Mumbai. Swami promised a devotee that during his next visit to Mumbai, he would come to the devotee's house and oversee the study circle that was held there. But when Swami arrived in Mumbai, there was no indication from him about the visit. So the devotee asked Swami about it. Swami said, "If I come there, everything in that area will get disrupted, because the road is narrow and it is full of shops on either side. And if I come, a huge crowd will gather, and this will inconvenience all of you." On hearing this, the devotee's daughter felt extremely disappointed, and then she got angry too. Next moment, Swami said, "Daughter seems to be very angry." He turned to her and said, "I will come, but do you want my presence for 2 hours, or would you prefer to have me there forever?" The moment she heard this, her anger vanished and her devotion was reawakened. Who will refuse the gift of Swami's presence forever? Swami kept his word, and the devotee experienced his divine presence in the house all the time. Om Shri Sathya Sai Kalpadruma.